I'm doing a video now with Nick Thompson, and here in the UK, you may not know who he is, but I think he's spectacular. He's part of a television program, a reality TV program called Love Is Blind. He was in the second season, and together with some other people from that show, he's set up a thing called UCAN, which I think is going to save reality TV. It's a sort of prototype for support, and something that I've certainly been screaming about for the last 3 years. And there is nothing like that in the UK. We'll talk about unions and things in a second, but certainly the UK version of Equity isn't interested in helping reality TV people because it says they're not professionals. Yeah, I know.
What?
Do you know the odd thing about UK Equity? And there's a fellow called Paul Fleming, who's the general secretary, something that runs the USSR. But he said to me that reality TV people are amateurs, and that you're not really performing because you're only being yourself. And what I said to him was that the UK version of Equity is a poor copy of the American version of Equity, and it comes along. And what the UK had before that was a thing called the Variety Artists Federation. And that goes way back to the beginning of 1907 or something. And there was a wonderful lady called Mary Lloyd, who was a wonderful music hall performer. You'd call her vaudeville performer. And she sang a song called My Old Man Says Follow the Van. And she was just loud and proud and wonderful. And she called out all her people on strike. The Variety Artists Federation took the view that if you were performing, you deserve to have union representation. You deserve to have somebody to stand, to have your back between you and exploitation.
Collectively. Yeah.
Now, Equity doesn't take that view. It takes the view that it's also the gatekeeper for the industry. So it validates people who are actors as well as supports actors. So what happens to those people in reality TV who find themselves dominating the television schedules for night after night after night, as you did, as I did, without any union representation? So I asked Paul Fleming, well, he's a sort of professional trades unionist. I said, well, if we're not going to be represented by Equity, who does represent us? And at that point, he decided the conversation should close, and we haven't got back to it. But I think UCAN is really finding an alternative to union support or agent support. So on your website, which I hugely recommend people have a look at, we'll put up a link at the end. On your website, you say anybody who wants to get involved in reality TV should come to you and get advice. Because what, and nobody knows what, because in the press is seduced by the reality TV propaganda that after reality TV exposure, you may have a problem with fame or the loss of fame or too much social media exposure. But in my case, I felt that the problem was control by the studio and a loss of agency. But anyway, let's go on to your experience.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about Love Is Blind? What is Love Is Blind? Come on.
So Love Is Blind is actually the most watched reality TV show in the world. It's a global program, so maybe some of you have seen it or heard of it. I was on season 2. Season 5 comes out in a few weeks. What's interesting to me is Love Is Blind is sold to you as this social experiment to find love, where 15 men are going to meet with 15 women, and you're going to talk through a wall and never see each other. And you're going to do this for about 10 days. And if you fall in love with someone without ever seeing them and you get engaged, then the next day you get to see them for the first time. And then now that you're engaged, you get to see them for the first time. Then you go spend a little honeymoon for our season, it was Mexico. I know they've moved around a little bit to different places over the seasons. And basically, then they, follow you, and I'm using air quotes, follow you for the next 4 weeks as you integrate your lives together, meet each other's friends, and But the reality is these are all totally manufactured situations. Like you're not getting followed around by a documentary crew. You are being put into specific scenes with specific people, specific talking points, and pretty much at their beck and call and forced to do so. And when we were in the pods, which is what they call the rooms when you're first meeting each other, we were being recorded for 18 to 20 hours a day. We were mic'd the entire time, and we, all experienced exhaustion, um, hunger. There was a lack of food and water. We were dehydrated. One day I got a migraine so bad that, I had to leave set. And, they tried to convince me to stay I would say that's what they were trying to do. So it's a very exploitative process. And we had to give up not just our phone, which they told us, but we had to give up our passports. We had to give up our licenses, our wallets, our cash, our credit cards. We had absolutely nothing to make any kind of purchase of food or water or anything really. And then you're trapped in your hotel room and you're not on set because you don't get a key to your hotel room. You don't have any idea, and you have no recourse whatsoever to basically live your life. You're essentially a prisoner for 24 hours.
But you were trapped for 10 months or?
No, it was 10 weeks. So it was, I'm sorry, that's my bad. It was a total of 8 weeks and then an additional 3 weeks. Wait, was it 7? Sorry, it was 7 or 8 weeks and then we did an additional 3 weeks later.
By the time, by the way, because of this technique of trapping you and taking away your mobile.
No clock, no windows, nothing.
This has a name, don't you? I think we spoke about it the last time we spoke.
Yeah.
21 technique. It's a form of torture.
It is.
And it's used as a means of sort of lubricating you, of making you compliant.
Exactly. They take away your individuality. It's like a cult. I'm recording a podcast later this afternoon with someone who survived a cult. And when she was explaining to me what they did to her when she got there, and just over a few days to strip her of all of her individuality and humanity. That's kind of what they do to you. They even do it quicker.
I was a monk for a short time, so I understand that as well. So I was a monk. I was a goat herder. I've done the sort of culty thing. So I thought I'd be safe from that, but no. I mean, there's nothing quite like the pressure of a huge industry focused on you, to get you to produce the performance that they want. And when I came off the show, people asked me for my telephone number on the street. Apparently there was a prostitute who asked me for my phone number just outside King's Cross, which is quite a well-known place. And she asked me for my phone number, and I gave it to her. And the person I was with was flabbergasted that I would do such a thing. And
people do that. That is weird. People ask me for that too. Not a lot. No.
You didn't. Oh, you're made of sterner stuff, Nick, than I am. I mean, I was.
I think it's totally fair. Like but that's something you don't really know until you do. Like I had to learn the art of getting out of a conversation, right? And again, I don't fault people. I think people are, just our society. Like we look at people and we see on TV, you see fame of any kind, and it's cool. Like I remember I sat in a movie theater watching Gone Girl, and a few seats down from me was Norman Reedus, who plays Daryl Dixon on The Walking Dead. And that was my favorite show at the time. Like my whole Sunday would revolve around making sure I could watch that show live. Yes. And I just remember like how excited I was. And then we used the toilet, the urinal next to each other. And I just remember sitting there and like my heart was racing. So, he's obviously more famous than I would say pretty much any reality star.
He spoke to you.
He said, "Hey," in his voice. It's like, "Hey,"
and your comes up. I mean, I met quite a number of famous people after I'd come out, and it was I was always surprised that they knew who I was. And that,
it's thing. Yeah, it is interesting. Danielle, who was my ex-wife, we went to the iHeart Music Awards, which was a red carpet event. And we were shocked that so many famous people, way more famous than we were ever going to be, knew who we were.
Yeah.
And Oliver Hudson, who was Jennifer Hudson's, wait, Oliver Hudson, Kate Hudson, geez, Jennifer Hudson, Oliver Hudson, Kate Hudson's brother, who's a pretty talented, famous actor.
Yes.
When I was chatting with him, and he was like, everyone here knows who you are because we all watch reality TV to escape our everyday lives of making movies and TV shows.
I did theatre last Christmas, and people, when I came along for the first read through, there were people who were acting like groupies in the cast, and I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it.
It's so funny.
You know, and you think, well, but you know, you're the real deal. You've been in these great musicals, and I've just been on telly, and I would love to do what you're doing. But
I think, yeah, it's the pedestal. People have you on a pedestal, but I think, I think that's okay too. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I just think it's
that's a small issue, and I think if we had proper representation, proper agents, proper unions who we knew had our back, then we could deal with this. But the media has then sort of blown this out of proportion and said that is the problem. That's not the problem.
Right.
And that's why people kill themselves. People kill themselves because they have lost their identity and they have lost their agency, and they don't
have any support.
Yeah.
And I know I said this to you.
Yeah, sometimes they're confused and they think that their agency is this strange fantasy. It's not. It's been taken.
Well, and it goes away. It goes away. That's the thing. I've talked to some other reality cast members about this before, but like when there's like science behind what's happening in your brain with your chemicals and in your body when this is happening. And when you go, I woke up on the day they announced the cast of the show, which they announced all 15 men, 15 women. I went from like 300 something followers on Instagram to over 7,000 just when I woke up. Yeah. Just when I woke up. And then, to
Instagram, and it was set up for me while I was inside. I came out to 100,000 followers.
It's crazy. Yeah. It just happens.
Yeah. And I still don't understand Instagram. Someone came to stay with me for a week to try and introduce me, 1 week or 2 weeks, I can't remember, to try and introduce me a few weeks ago to TikTok. I sort of got it.
Don't even bother.
I still don't get it. I can't.
Well, what I would say, that the best advice that I got was pick a platform. And I got this from someone who does social media management. Pick a platform where you have your most followers, which for you would be Instagram, right? So put any energy there that you have. And then, TikTok, you can post and ghost, which is when you post and then you just get off. And that's what I do. I don't engage that much with TikTok. I don't have a huge following there. I just started it a few months back, or actually really just started paying attention to it a few months back. And I've gained a little bit of a following. I think I have like 7,000 or 8,000 now. But to me, it's like they usually get like the second-hand content that I created for Instagram. And if you think about, oh, go ahead.
No. If you think about.
If you think about it, I look at it like if I'm making a reel, right, which is a video,
yes,
I'm doing that knowing that's probably likely going to go out to people that are not my followers. So I usually just end up getting a lot of hate for that. Trying to help people is very polarizing, believe it or not. It's kind of funny. I don't get it. It's a sad reflection on society. But then I use my stories, which those I consider like my my group chat with my friends. People that are going to see my stories are people that are following me and following me for me, right? And then I do my picture posts, like your carousel post, if I have a moment in time that I want to capture, like a timeline. So like, for example, 2 weeks ago, my friends and I, every year we do annual hot dog fest, and we all make different hot dog recipes, and then we vote on what's the best. So I want that's a moment in time for the year, right? So that I posted pictures from the event. So that's kind of how I think about it. I don't know if that's helpful to you, but if you overthink it too much, it just consumes you.
My only knowledge of hot dogs is Mr. Prigozhin, who I think is no longer with us. So sorry.
That's fair. It's probably for the best.
But yeah, no, but can we go back to the negatives, because negative doesn't, and we have so little time together. So, but look, what was so bad for you?
You know, the thing,
Gone
and
wrong.
I've talked about this so much that it's becoming sort of it is the bad stuff, right? It becomes negative if you don't. And this is where I had to focus and change. But the production was awful. I lost 15 pounds in 3 weeks when we were filming.
I've seen you in your suit, and good suit, and your looks a bit baggy on you.
That's very true. And I had my suit tailored 2 weeks before I went to this because I wanted to look good. I was going to, potentially see my future wife for the rest of my life, and I wanted to look good. My suit was baggy by the time I put it on because I wasn't getting adequate food, water, or even exercise. So you're losing muscle, you're losing all of it. Yeah.
And the stress is. You were presumably also working really strange hours, weren't you?
So during the filming in the pods and in Mexico, you are 100% of the time at their discretion, and you have to be off of work. So I had to take 3 weeks off of work completely. The only thing I could do was and I was, by the way, I was a VP of marketing and working as the interim chief marketing officer at a software company of 250 people. I was managing about 16 people and individually, and it was hard for me to like accept that I was going to go away, and I had to give an emergency contact if something went wrong, and I had to give my producer. So there was, I think, just one time where I had to respond to a text message, but it's very strange. And then you come back and you're back into real life, and you're working your regular jobs and then filming on the weekends and filming at night. So you're just going all day, every day, pretty much for 4 weeks.
Back to real life before the show had aired. So you had that very strange time. I mean,
that was where things got really bad, because once you get married, so we got married on the show in the season finale, or whatever you want to call it, the last episode. And then after our marriage was filming, this was June 8th. The next day we did a couple on the fly interviews, which I don't know if you had those, but basically it's when they pull you aside and you do an interview and they ask you about what just happened.
Yes. This is very
so we had to do
from Survivor, isn't it? Is that sort of playbook? Yeah,
very much. And then they're just gone, right? And so we were struggling with our relationship and individually, having gone through that. You're 7 weeks to meet someone and decide to marry them. That's a pressure cooker. It is an insane amount of pressure because every day you're making life-altering decisions. Like, she's meeting my parents. What if my parents don't like her? What if they do like her? What if they like her but don't think we should get married this way? And vice versa. And friends. What if the friends like her?
Well, your parents were on camera as well?
My mom and my sisters. My dad did not want to be on camera.
Right. And did they approve or disapprove of your choice?
It was they were fine with it being my decision. My dad wasn't very happy because I didn't tell them I was going on the show, because you're not allowed to tell anyone.
Yeah.
And so I told my sisters, and I told like a couple of friends. So my sisters were like, "Oh, maybe this will work for you." Like, my friends were like, you've been ready to get married. Like, maybe this will work for you." And some of them were like, "Don't do this." I will say that. Some were like, you're not cut out for this, but like, this isn't going to be good for you. Like, for me, some friends were worried it wasn't going to be good for me. Not even from like a mental health perspective, but from the type of people that go on some of these shows. They were like, you're not gonna.
Sorry, I keep butting in on you. I'm so rude.
No, it's totally fine. It's a conversation.
English thing. But so tell me, did you volunteer or were you headhunted? Are you allowed to answer?
I'm totally fine. I was headhunted. I had
Me too.
casting. Yeah, I had a casting agent reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Do you know anybody who actually applied?
No.
No,
now
me.
I have.
Me.
And so this is where my theory, and this is a little theory, a little based on an interview I had, I guess a conversation I had privately with a producer, but they actually have characters already
Oh, yeah.
determined, and then they go cast to those characters.
Absolutely. And I think I was cast as the old fart who would be thrown out quite quickly. And for some reason, I was engaging enough on camera that they presumably changed my role, and I remained in the show. So I was very grateful. I had a really good edit, Nick.
Yeah.
Could never complain about my edit. What I complain about is what happened afterwards and what happened to other people. But on this business about whether or not you apply or whether or not you are headhunted, I was always told there are about 16 people in the show who had been headhunted and the rest had applied. But even those people who say they applied, or even those people who I was told had applied, they'd applied for another show, or they'd applied.
Yes, I have heard that too.
On a pilot version of this show, and then they were brought back to do. So nobody actually applies to be on the show that they're being showcased on.
And you know why? That's because if you apply and you're better suited for another character they have on another show, they want to move you along.
Yeah.
It's a very nefarious,
yeah,
well thought out scam. It is.
You know how a torturer would get control of you. They would start telling you to do things that you would do normally. It's how a teacher control of the class is, that you go into the class you say, children stand up, and everybody stands up, and nobody refuses, and you suddenly feel, oh, I've got control. And then when you ask somebody to do something that maybe they wouldn't normally want to do, they're used to doing it. And the army does the same thing. And
they build the trust. They build the trust talking to you over the even, like, I think I've talked probably 5-10 times to my producer, virtual happy hours, hour conversations on the phone, all this stuff ahead of time. So they're getting to know you inside and out. And I've told this before too, but like when we got to set, first we were told you can't talk to any of the other men because we want to capture it all on camera. So you're sat at different tables, right? Yeah. They shuffle you in from a van, sit you at a different table. Then they're like, okay, time to give up your phones. Last call for phones. Zip your phone up, lock it, take it. Then they go, I don't remember which order it was, but they go through your bag and they take everything out of your bag to make sure you're not sneaking anything in you're not supposed to have. Then they make you put it back in. So now they can, that's like its own weird control thing.
In my case, they told me what I could take with me, and I had this huge trunk. But they went through the trunk, having told me what I could take. They went through the trunk and they started removing things, saying, "Oh, you can't have this." Yep. But you'd already agreed to that, so it's like, again, a form of control.
It's like a game.
It's control. It's just a method of control. And at one point, they tried to give me the back book of it taken along, and I thought, no, it hadn't got the pictures in it. They eventually did give me back the real one, but they said I could put some of my own artwork on the walls, and I brought my artwork, and there was one idea that I was going to pull the artwork, pull these pictures out of the trunk, rather like Mary Poppins. It never happened. Why? Because the artwork they got on the walls was this sort of zingy stuff, which do you know about the what's it called, the sort of dazzle camouflage by Graham Carr.
No.
It was used in the First World War to confuse radar and to confuse people, and they had these sort of
yes, I did.
On the ships. Either Graham Carr or a fellow called Norman Wilkinson. We don't seem to know who was the person who invented it. And Picasso said, "Oh no, the Cubists invented it." But the but the whole thing is, it's designed to make you feel uncomfortable. So they surround you. They surround you with these bright colors. Well, just look at my clothes. I don't have a problem with bright colors.
Well, and look at this in my wall. And
your wall could be straight out of a Hockney picture. I'm thinking bigger splash, and it's disturbing. It's disturbing. But don't worry. But no, it's so you didn't have a problem with that, did you? Or you don't think you did?
So then after they go through the bag, I thought going through the bag, I'm like, okay, I get it, but also, like, this is worse than the airport. Like, you go to the airport and they think you're a terrorist and they treat you better than that. It's like it was just very dehumanizing. And then they take your wallet and your passport and stuff, and you're sitting, and then they shuffle you to a hotel room, put you in a hotel room. This is after telling you you can't leave. If you want to go to the gym or you want to go outside, you need to schedule it with your wrangler. You get 30 minutes.
Taken by somebody.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then there's 15 men all trying to go to the gym and get outside. So it's like, yeah, you're up in 6 hours. So stay in your hotel room and don't leave, because you don't want to have to come back down and we know that you left, because you'll have to get a key from us.
Yeah.
So it is, and phone, I mean,
Prison, really.
you can't make a phone call with, I get the phone stuff in our situation, because they don't want you going and tracking down like the person you're talking to. And like, I get that. And I think there's elements like that. That's okay, right? You got an emergency number. But, if I were to say, I really need to talk to my mom, or I really need to talk to my dad, or I really want to talk to my friend, like that wasn't going to happen. And when you take away, and this is kind of, I didn't realize how exploitative all of this really was until way later, when I actually started reflecting back and thinking, this is messed up, because I was so hyper focused on making my marriage work. And the fact that, and again, like we loved each other. It is not a question of that. It's a question of the impact everything else had. And when I got divorced, got smeared in the media and got a whole lot of hate for being a whole lot of things that are not true. And then I lost my job. And it was just like all these things happened in 2 months. And
am I right? You were also fearing about being homeless as well.
so I did get it. It has gotten to this point where, I did everything right, like how you're supposed to. You're supposed to go to college, right? Like you're supposed to save. You're supposed to buy a house, and then that becomes how you gain any kind of wealth, right? Is you invest in property, you invest in a home. Then what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to have 6 months savings. Like, so I didn't have 6 months. I had probably 4 or 5 months in my savings account. But, unemployment here sucks. So I was getting, my unemployment for the entire month did not cover my mortgage.
Yes.
So I'm getting a very minuscule amount that doesn't compare to the salary I was getting as a VP of marketing. It doesn't compare to anything. I did not get much of a severance package
to pay before you went on.
Sorry?
You couldn't anticipate the effect that reality TV
no
at all. In fact,
because I literally, yeah, and I went on this. First of all, I was naive. I didn't realize how, I knew the show was big. I didn't realize how big.
No.
Right? So what I did,
naive as well. I hadn't seen reality TV. I understood television, but I didn't know reality TV, and I just thought, okay, I can manage TV cameras. What I couldn't manage was all the stuff that literally came afterwards, and this level of control that came afterwards.
Which is just, that's where it's awful. I mean, I had to have my contract amended because in there it says for a year, or maybe it was 5 years. I think it's a year after the show. All media appearances, all podcasts, all interviews have to run through the show first.
That's where I got into a problem. Yeah.
And and so
doing everything.
Exactly. And they control it all. And so I did podcasts, I did interviews for my work. Like I was the evangelist, in my role, you're the evangelist.
Same thing here.
Yeah. And so I had that amended. So I didn't have to get permission for that. But what if I did? And then I was naive and I was like, I'm just going to be myself. And I didn't get a bad at it. There's some things that they definitely misrepresented, but whatever. I do have this innate ability to not really care what other people think about me, because I know I work the best I can and I do the best I can, and I'm always trying to do the right thing. So, I don't really care mostly what people think, but, when it starts to impact, people at work and how they view you. And some people thought it was super cool. Some people, the CEO was like, oh, I was really worried about watching it thinking I was going to find out you were an asshole or something. And he's like, but I wasn't. I got to watch it and I got to see the same Nick that I know, but on TV.
Yes.
Yeah. And so
you have to congratulate,
but
they managed to find that inner character of you, and that translates very nicely onto television. That they did that for me too. The Tim you saw on television was very much what I am, but I was conscious that I was performing.
You are. I mean, there's however many cameras in front of you. Of course, you're going to be conscious of it.
My cat was the best bay he could be. He was wonderful.
Oh, my dog got, I mean, people still, my content with my dog that I post is still like the most liked and engaged with. And
Yes.
he's got his own little Instagram with like 4,000 followers now because of the show.
Oh, for Noah Bay,
Yeah.
unfortunately,
Yeah.
is
Where is he? I was going to show you. Grayson, come here. You got to see this guy.
I've
He's
got
the
to
star.
see him.
Here he comes.
Grayson.
Yeah, his name is Grayson. He's a mini golden doodle.
Oh, he's lovely.
Yeah.
Gosh,
Say
he's,
hi.
how old is he? He's about 4 or
He's 5. He just turned 5 in July.
he is lovely. Oh, I think I ought to have one. Gosh, he should come
You
over.
should. Oh my God.
Come and stay.
Get him. We'll get him over to the UK.
TV. But you know when soldiers were trained on the R21 technique and they were going through all this stuff for a much shorter period of time than you or I, there's a record of a huge number of these people from Australia. There's a very interesting case in Australia. There's cases in America, there's cases in Britain of people having serious PTSD after only spending a weekend doing this, with a comorbid depression. We had you had 3 weeks in a pod. I had a month in a flat. It has a huge effect on you, and then you had to go back and do more filming.
And you're pulled away, and this is what I don't think people can grasp until they actually experience it. You get pulled. So we all have structure in our lives. Some of it is less structured than others, but those things are what get us through our day, whether that's work, whether that's being a parent, whether that's whatever it is, content creation. We all have a structure, our workout routine, our walking my dog, when I eat, when I don't eat, when I drink, when I don't drink, when I go to the store. All of that is stripped away from you. And knowing that the structure, and again, you don't even always realize you have structure in your life, but you do. And when those things are ripped away from you and you're put in this scenario where you are literally not allowed to go to the bathroom without permission and an escort.
Yes. And you're not allowed to get up in the morning without permission. You have to remain.
Yeah,
I remain.
That's exactly it.
I remain in bed. I wake up quite early. So I was waking up at what I presume was my normal time, which is 6 or 7 o'clock. And then the
fact that you don't know that's crazy. You don't even know what time it is. You don't know what day it is.
And I lost track of days very, 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 very quickly. But then we didn't start filming probably to about 11 or 12 o'clock. So I used to lie in bed and run through the entire music of a given musical at top volume. When I came out of the show, I was doing this in hotel rooms without realizing it. I was sleep. I'm a dreadful sleep talk anyway, but I was going through Hello Dolly. I had complaints, but from hotel management. I was singing Hello Dolly at 3 o'clock in the morning. Well, sorry, pardon me. You're just lucky I wasn't doing all the as well.
But, well, you know what the best part for me, I think, was that I got away from the news for a few weeks. That was so I came out and I'm like, the world hasn't ended, and I don't have to watch the news all the time.
In my case, we were suddenly plunged into an election, and people wanted me, and they were very.
Was that Jeremy Corbyn's election? I follow a little UK politics too.
I can't remember. It was Boris's election in 2019.
Yeah.
Was that?
Yeah. That was him and Corbyn, and there was one other, wasn't there? No. Or at least one other relevant.
Oh, there were other relevant people, but yeah. But I knew Boris when he was a university student, just. So I knew all these people. So people were producers then calling me and saying, would you do this show? Would you do that show? And I say, yes. And then I dutifully handed the information on to the PR people, and they stopped it. And at one point, somebody rang me up and said they were so disappointed that I didn't get back to them. And I said, well, I did. And the PR people said that they're talking to you. I said, no, they're not. And we've now run out of the opportunity. Now, what they wanted to do a blind date a blind dinner date with me and a senior politician. And the person they'd got in mind was a lady called Anne Widdecombe, who is quite a ridiculous person, and a sort of elderly and very, very pro Brexit. And what she didn't know, they probably didn't know, was that during the filming of The Circle, when I had to go to the loo, they had this camera in the loo that had to be turned round. And if you were going to be some time in the loo, let's be euphemistic, the camera completely turned around and the sound went off. If you were just going to go in there for a sort of quick visit, the camera would spin slightly and the sound would go off. So it required a lot of thing around. So they wanted to know what I was going to do in the loo when I went. So I thought, I'm not giving you medical details. So my euphemism was, this is a farage, which was the long time, and I think I used that on camera. I said, "Oh, Farage is the person who was behind Brexit," and the other one was a Widdecombe, which was just it sounds right, doesn't it? Just a little Widdecombe. But sometimes I would go in there and they would say, "Oh, you're up quickly," and I would say, "Yes, it was just a lot of Theresa May, hot air." I turned the entire experience of loo constraints into a political debate, but I was so looking forward to that sort of thing, but that was stopped, and I found that really frustrating. But that was part of their control.
Well, that's the thing is they want to have that control, and they don't want your personal brand, for lack of a better word, or your personal identity. They want to own it. They want to own your likeness. They want to be able to make sure that the only thing you can do is promote their profitability and their show,
and not get bigger than their show, of course,
and not get bigger than their show, because that's I'm probably like the least, not popular, but like I'm not very dramatic. I'm not very.
But Nick,
I don't know.
You're very charismatic. You make eye
contact.
Well,
thank you. Well, thank you. Yeah, but that's been years, right? Like that's years of building up confidence. It's years of professional success and being forced to.
You can see why you were cast. You only have to.
Well, I had to play that role. I was supposed to play. I'm convinced I was supposed to play the role of someone who would definitely get married because he had his shit together. I'm thoroughly convinced of that.
Yeah. And what about the wider impact on your family? Do you find that was horrific as well?
I felt like, so my family is very private, I will say, and I think that they kind of got misrepresented a little bit in the edit, and they came off very cold and not welcoming, and edited a little. I don't even know if it was out of order, but misrepresented in the edit. They made my mom kind of look cold. And listen, my mom and I are not best friends, but like she's not like a cold-hearted, cruel person that they made it look like. And same with my sisters. And then, my one sister went through a very messy, ugly, sad divorce. And her ex-husband had actually left her and my nephew, and also was kind of scary in other ways. And my sister was left in pretty much like financial ruins, had to move in with my dad because he spent everything. They had nothing. And so she was very curious and asking Danielle questions about, like, my brother's successful. My brother has, a little bit of money. My brother owns a condo. Like, I just want to make sure that what happens to me doesn't happen to him. Yeah. Can you, and I don't remember exactly because none of this aired. They didn't show any of this, but they used pieces of that and comments from that and crafted a scene, and didn't tell that story or why my sister was emoting on her face the things that she was. And then my other sister, they took something completely out of context. And, again, people are always going to have opinions and stuff, but we all ate lunch afterward. My mom hugged Danielle. My sisters loved her. You know, shortly after we got married, my sisters and Danielle went out for a girls' night out and, you know, had a blast. So it's like all of these things, obviously the cameras aren't there, but like they didn't want to tell the story of my, you know, my sisters just being thorough or expressing concerns. They wanted to make it look like they were not having any of it.
Yeah, because that's the story they want to tell.
Yeah.
Drama of it all. I mean, basically, you become a what was it? A soap opera without the benefit of a writer.
That's exactly it.
So
that's exactly it.
Which at the moment, of course, I imagine reality TV in the States is simply flourishing because you've got a writer's strike. So, you know, what else can the States do? Am I right? In 2007, there was a big surge of reality TV because there was a.
You are, yes. You could. I talk about that on my Instagram. So there was a surge of reality TV in the late 80s, but it's not the reality TV that we see today. It's Jerry Springer. It's the show.
Or what was it?
It's Jerry Springer. It's those talk shows. It's the show Cop. It's Rescue 911. Yes. Yeah, all of these shows that were just based on reality, as I like to say now, like based on a true story, like how much of it's true, how much of it's real, no one really knows. But you know, that is very that was very much the beginning of reality TV, and that was on a strike. So then in 2008, the WGA went on strike again, and that's where you get the reality TV we see today. Dating shows, competition, so much of the programming becomes unscripted because A, you can do it without writers. B, you can do it without actors. We're experiencing now. C, it's cheaper to produce. You don't have to pay people. And the only unions you really have are the crew. So you can work with that. I mean, we had a break.
And the crew.
The only time we had a break
is when the crew was changing.
Yes. The only time we had a break when we were in the pods at Love is Blind is when the crew was swapping out for a new union crew because they couldn't work any longer. Their union contract wouldn't allow them to.
I remember having a really tough time when my voice of God, when both my voices of God, the daytime and the evening time, were off, and somebody new was there, or during the night if I had a crisis in the night. I was a dreadful sleep talker and sleepwalker, and once or twice I did wake up in a panic.
Oh, I bet. Oh, that's so bad. I'm sorry.
Very lucky I didn't walk out of my flat, because apparently in my case we weren't locked in.
They'd probably shoot you right at that point.
I would have broken all the storyline, because I would have gone out and then gone into somebody else's flat. And the whole idea was I was too bizarre to be believable. So there were people that I was they thought there were people who right to the end thought that I must have been catfishing, that I couldn't be real, but that I was. And my arch enemy in the show, we got on terribly well, but they didn't put those conversations in, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Well, now he was allergic to cats, and so we'd go off to this little room to do our discussion about who we were going to block. I was always involved in that. And he would go into the room and discover cat hairs, and so he realized I was real, or at least the cat was real. So
that was real.
I must have been. And when we finally met, I was practically being hosed down. You know those sticky things with sticky runners.
Rolling. Oh yeah.
They had about 3 members of crew rolling me down for about 3 hours to make not the slightest hair from the cat was on me, just in case.
Because they didn't want to give that away.
No, because James literally came out in blisters and boils. I mean, he was terrible.
Oh, okay. I see.
And the big reveal was I went into the room, and there was this man with a beard, and he was supposed to be a girl called can't remember what her name was now, but anyway, clearly he wasn't a girl, and I was supposed to look really shocked. I did manage a slight look of shock, but I knew he wasn't a girl, and I knew he was a baby, and that was sort of obvious. But they got the view they wanted, and I think all I was doing was saying, "You've been a naughty boy," or something. But we got on well, and I mean, but you know, the other thing is, in my case, I didn't have a relationship with the other cast members, with the other performers. My relationship was with the crew and with the production company. And then they suddenly got that. And you've made this great investment, this great friendship with these people who are suddenly taken out of your lives. And
Yep.
I've just had this very intense experience, and it's gone. I've done theatre, I've done all that sort of performance stuff, and you have that experience when you do a show. You have this intense relationship with the people you're performing with night after night, and then they go. But it wasn't quite such a wrench as this was. This was
No.
unbelievably.
Well, and then, those people you can keep in contact with, the ones you want to, and it's,
Told not to talk to me, of course.
yeah, because of course it's just all so manipulated. And what I think it manipulative.
And then I did an article for one of the newspapers. I did a few articles, I think, I can't remember. And one of the articles I said that, the period after the show was 18 months of sheer hell. It was worse than being held at gunpoint, which has happened to me on a few occasions. And
Oh, geez.
so I know about this sort of thing. Kalashnikovs, by the way. And a very small gun on the first occasion. When you see your first gun, you think, my goodness, that's small. And you think that's not really worth writing home about. But then a Kalashnikov is a different order of beast. But anyway, I said it was worse than being held at gunpoint, and 18 months of sheer hell. And then shortly after that, I hemorrhaged badly in the kitchen, and I had cancer, and I had bowel cancer. And I went straight in for surgery. But actually, when I went into the hospital, very amusingly, I was on you would call it a gurney, wouldn't you?